partner. Write a paragraph and pass it over.
You know what? Everybody does it differently. The way Shelley and I did it was everything. We pretty much did everything together. Soaps we split up because we had to do it so quickly. So soaps we'd get an outline and we just wrote the dialogue. So we get an outline and then we basically say A B A B A B. You take. Actually, that's not how we did it. We did storylines like Apache Kayla were, and I don't even remember the other character, Shani Kimberly. She'd take one storyline, I'd take one storyline, and there's usually a third storyline that we would split up. And that way we could then modem back and forth and piece it together and then rewrite together. Beauty and the Beast and the primetime shows together the whole time. We would just sit there together, we'd sit there together to do the story, sit there together to do the dialogue. Other people do it differently, but that's how I worked and Shelley worked. And when I was, the brief time that I was doing with Caitlin, that's how we worked also. Yes?
Becky and I were having a discussion the other day about the title Walk Slowly. Is it from the given book Broken Wings and Cobalt that we talked about walking slowly with his love is great? Or is it from there's a poem by Adelaide Love called Walk Slowly?
It's, the question is where did the title Walk Slowly came from, and it's from the poem. And I don't even remember the author. What's her name?
Adelaide Love. I only know that.
Adelaide Love. Yeah, it was in a book I had, just a big book of poetry that I had. And I came across the poem when we were trying to find a title. And I thought, that's a good one, you know. It was perfect. In the back?
I don't know if anybody asked this, but has any of the stars ever attempted to ask you to change something or rearrange something or any advice on what they wanted in it?
Have the actors ever asked me to change anything? No, I don't think so. It's usually pretty much in shape by the time it gets to the stage. And if there's any requests, a lot of times it comes in conversations that you've had before with the actors, so you kind of know what they like and what they don't like. Like when we first came on to Beauty and the Beast, no one told us that Linda didn't like to be called Kathy. And only from talking to her did we find that out. We thought it was really strange that no one in the office ever said, you know, it's Catherine, not Kathy. And in the spec script that we wrote that got us the job of Beauty and the Beast, she was Kathy all over the place. And we just, you know, by talking to the people on the set, you get to know their likes and their dislikes and their little pet peeves that sometimes really mean nothing except to them, and no one else would give a darn. But you try to, you know, do what people like.
But in this, the character of Joe always called her Kathy.
The character of Joe always called her Kathy. Yeah, that was his kind of pet name for her, I guess. And it was just that Linda didn't like the character to be called Kathy by everybody. She didn't like it in the script, on the dialogue. She didn't like it. She wanted it to say Catherine. Yes.
As a writer, would you have a different ending to the series? And if so, what would it have been?
Like you haven't heard the answer before. Okay, when Linda said she wasn't coming back, we could have recast. We could have killed Catherine off. We could have had Catherine leave Vincent. That would have been really interesting. Or we could have ended the show. And recasting would have been difficult. This actress, Mary Beth Evans, was actually someone we suggested because I always found that she had a similar quality to Linda at the time. I'm not sure now anymore. I haven't seen her lately. But at the time, I always thought she had a very similar quality and a similar look. Her facial structure is the same. But really, basically, recasting wasn't going to work. You know, no one could replace the Linda that we were watching. Having Kathy leave it, so we won't even talk about that. That's ridiculous. Ending the show, I think putting a nice romantic ending to the fairy tale would have been my choice, as opposed to what we did. And if killing the character was the choice, then I certainly wouldn't have done it the way it was done, with the violence and the psychological abuse and torture, basically, and then have the ending where he finally finds her alive and she dies. And it was awful. I mean, I just thought those meetings were just so hard. We would sit there in the office with piles of letters from you guys on the table, and you know, saying don't do this, and it's just like a steamroller, just doing it anyway. So it was real hard. I would have just ended the fairy tale with a nice ending.
What do you think of the fact that Vincent, or Catherine Diamond Vincent's arm, was one of the 10 most romantic moments on television by TV guys?
Well, you know, I suppose it was romantic, but if you watched the show the whole time, it was painful, and it was probably voted on by people who didn't. You know, they watched it as a scene set aside by itself. I'm sorry, did you hear the question? I'm sorry, guys. You guys have to just yell at me and tell me. What did I think about TV Guide voting the death scene, Catherine's death scene, as one of the 10 most romantic scenes on television? And I just think they probably watched it as an isolated scene. And sure, if you watch it as an isolated scene with no emotional attachment to the characters, then it looks romantic. That has to be it, because it was a wonderful scene. I mean, Linda and Lon did a great job, of course. But having watched the show, you just wanted to pretend something else was happening. Anybody else?
How old are your children?
My son is 15 and my daughter's 13 and a half.
Have they watched the show?
No. I think maybe when we were writing it, they watched. But they were pretty little then. And I think they watched a couple of them with me, but they haven't watched it recently. Since they've gotten bigger, they haven't watched it, pulled out old tapes or anything. In the back?
Did you appoint Catherine and did you appoint Vincent